allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
Proposed interim cannabis ordinance moratorium.
Mayor Miller, council members, folks in the audience or at home. This is a request brought forth by city staff related to the state licensure allowance for cannabis, specifically for us related to the cultivation aspects that are potentially starting to accept applications this week, starting the 24th. City attorney has worked on this as well, so he's certainly welcome to jump in. We prepared a draft interim ordinance to give us a little bit of time to consider potential location allowances for cannabis grow cultivation facilities within our zoning ordinance. We do have the option to do nothing and keep our ordinance as it is. That's always an option, but staff is recommending the adoption of the interim ordinance for a moratorium through the remainder of 2024, end of the year, to pause or prohibit any cannabis-related businesses, including cultivation, until that time, to allow us to do some research, come back to the city council and present some potential options for looking at maybe amending our ordinance to call out specifically use or aspects related to cannabis sales, use, cultivation. We are under a general moratorium previously adopted by Stearns County as it relates to sale and use, but we are not covered with the aspect of cultivation, which was modified at the state level fairly recently, I believe in May, because they wanted to allow cultivation to begin in the summer in time that the plant could be cultivated, starting for the new year sales when legalization kicks off in Minnesota starting 2025, Jan 1. Staff is requesting the adoption of the interim ordinance in front of you for a short-term moratorium to expire no later than January 1st, 2025, or whenever it may be lifted before then by the city council approval. To prohibit cannabis-related businesses, including cultivation, to allow us that time to research and provide recommendations and potentially move forward with any changes the zoning ordinance might need, as well as any other aspects of the ordinances that might need to be tweaked a little bit. We will come back, upcoming work sessions, date to be determined at this point with discussion ahead of those requests. So recommending adoption of the attached interim ordinance. The ordinance would become effective upon its publication.
Council, got any questions for John or for Paul?
Just real quick. The Minnesota statute right now allows, I believe, 8 plants to be for personal use. But however, several weeks ago, there was something on the news that a person wanted to grow it and give it away, which is not in the statutes, or it might be. They're trying to decide that right now. Can we put that in the moratorium also, that there will be no growth of outside Minnesota statute for reasons to give to the public?
Let's see. Well, the statutes that have currently been enacted, the reference that you're making is a statute where they're giving some sort of an interpretation or making a decision about whether or not it applies to the situation. If we were to put into this moratorium, make sure I understand you correctly, language to the effect of any production of marijuana products would have to be in compliance with the statutes, or are you looking for something to the effect of you can't give away anything that you cultivate? Is there any reason why we can't do it? No, there's not. But developing some language that we could review and act upon, I don't think that we can accomplish that in the course of this meeting. because I would need to do some research on what we can actually prohibit. I'm not familiar with whether that statute prohibits any gifting other than the challenge that you're referring to. We could create that language, but I would say that it's not necessary to the current moratorium. If need be, we could bring it in on another. We could certainly put that before the council for consideration. But I would want to do some research into what that language of that particular statute is, because this only has to do with a late enactment. In this most recent legislative session, there was a recommendation from, I think it was the House, that they should make an exception on the timing to allow the social equity applicants an advance opportunity to get their names into the list for considering who's going to get one of these businesses. And that was a change that nobody saw coming or wasn't part of the original legislation. It was a later in time amendment. And when that happened, it caused kind of a knock-on concern of, well, does that mean that there's going to be businesses operating before the official guidance from the Office of Cannabis Management? They have said that they were aiming for a January 2025 launch of model ordinances, including zoning ordinances. But then with this change, there's the possibility at least that some of these social equity applicants, if their application is received and processed, that they could in theory be at a point where they're authorized to do work, authorized to open a retail center before any of the guidance that every city has been waiting for has been issued. Now, whether that's going to happen or not is an unknown. But for example, St. Joe is another community that said that they wanted to get ahead of it. I know that there's at least one other city, I apologize, I don't have the name on the top of my head, but there was at least one other that was concerned about unregulated businesses or not having guidance. So that's what this moratorium is for. But if we want to do something to the effect of, we don't want people giving away marijuana in Waite Park, I think that we can address that certainly, but I would want to present that as a separate issue because that's a separate statute. And I don't want to put language in front of the council that I haven't put any research into yet. So I'm not saying no to that idea, but tacking it onto this one, I just don't think that we can accomplish that without an opportunity for me to look at that statute in more detail. Because this has to do with a different piece of the legislation. This is the 342.01 as a general, and then there's a couple of provisions within it. It's like 342.13 subsection E is the one that talks about the timing that was changed with this session. I would want to look at the language dealing with what you can grow and have as your recreational stuff. We're just talking about actual businesses opening up, as opposed to somebody who's got some amount of crop, we'll call it, in their backyard, and whether they choose to give it away or what. That doesn't impact what we're trying to do with this moratorium, which is about the zoning for businesses in the city of Waite Park. Does that address the question adequately?
Yeah, because I don't think we need to worry about it, how short the interim ordinance is already. And to cultivate it and give it away in a few short months,
Yeah, but this would go on. I mean, it would be someone who's got 10 acres out there and he's got 5 that he can plant.
Yep. But since
That's my
we're-
concern, is that something like that would be not allowable under the
Yep.
sale or the giveaway of
When we're talking about
cannabis.
two different provisions of Minnesota statutes, I would want to be able to look at that other statute which deals with the private growth and cultivation, because that doesn't have to do with the retail sales, right? That doesn't have to do with opening a business. Those people don't have to have a business license of any
Right.
type. They don't have to have a storefront of any type. It's a different set of language. So, for example, I might look at that language and say, sure, someone's challenging it, but in my opinion, the challenge is unlikely to be successful. If we want to put a belt and suspenders on it, here's some language we can use to do that. But rather than cross two different provisions and two different concepts, the commercial versus the private usage, I'd say that if you allow me the time to put a little research, I can certainly put another item in front of the council for consideration, but I wouldn't want to mix those two categories.
I just,
Okay.
something we can look at along with this too.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
that we can curtail anything that would happen in the future once it's released.
Yep,
Make
absolutely.
it easier for him.
I'd make one other point of clarification. This is a little bit of a bounce off from the main topic, but just for clarification, as you should be aware or know, there is what they categorize as the low potency. That's the edibles and the seltzers. These things are the low potency products. those are unaffected by this moratorium. So if, for example, there's a liquor store in town that is selling THC low potency products, they're allowed to do that because there was a separate amendment to the liquor license law that said that if you have a liquor license, here's the list of everything that you can sell, and added to that list was the low potency edibles. So those businesses are not affected. This is about, when they're talking about cultivation and growth, they're talking about the point in time at which storefronts will be open in Minnesota where you can purchase the smokable product, right? You can get what you think of as the bud or the flower is what it's referred to. The sale of that is not live yet in Minnesota. And that sale is what this moratorium deals with. So to the extent that there's anybody in town who currently has the permission of the city via a license to sell the low potent edibles, those are governed by a different statute. They're not covered by this. So this moratorium only speaks to that future sale of the flowering plant.
Council, any other questions, comments?
I'll move to approve the interim cannabis ordinance.
Second it?
Further
Can you also-
discussion?
Can you also include the summary publication?
Sure. Include the summary publication.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed unanimously. Thanks, Paul. Item B, consider resolution governing write-in vote counting.
So during this last legislative session, the state passed a new law that allows local governments to register write-in votes. This has always been allowed at the state and federal level, but now they're letting local governments do it as well. So what that means is if after filing closes and then all of a sudden John Smith says, well, I'm gonna run as a write-in, but I now have to go to the city and register my name as a write-in to have my name count. Otherwise, we get a lot of Santa Claus, Mickey Mouse, people think they're funny on the ballot, and then we have to count those right now. This is taking that away unless somebody has gone into City Hall, filled out the correct form, and said, I want my write-in vote to count. So that's what this resolution would allow us to do. Otherwise, we will continue to keep counting every single write-in vote.
But you're gonna, instead of counting Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck, you're gonna have to still pull them out because it's gonna say a write-in.
Correct,
But you don't have to count it. You can just, Donald Duck, throw it away.
Yep.
Mickey Mouse, throw it away.
correct,
But
correct.
the rest of the
And if
votes
it's got,
on the
if it's
ballot
got your
count.
name on it,
Yes,
it still won't count unless it was registered.
correct.
Okay. All right.
But the other votes do count on the ballots.
Yeah, it's just that one for that
Absolutely.
seat, whatever. Yeah.
I'll move to approve it.
I'll second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed unanimously. Anybody got anything else? Chief? Carla, Paul?
Sir.
All right, if not, we are adjourned at 4:43.